Do you want to have the confidence to truly rock retirement? Well, I'm going to show you how on the Retirement Answer Man Show. Hey there, welcome to the show. My name is Roger Whitney. I'm excited you're here at the end of May and at the end of this month-long theme on the non-financial plan. I'm going to try to wrap it up so you can figure out how to create this new rhythm in your life. So heads up, next month, June, the 6 months of the year, can't believe it, we're going to focus on really just answering your questions. And we're going to start doing this more. So the entire month will just be talking about you and what's on your mind. So if you have a question for the show, you can go to rogerwhitney.com/Ask Roger, and we'll try to answer it on the show. When I left college, I went on a week-long rafting trip down the Colorado River in the Grand Canyon. It was amazing. It was a weird trip because it was really hot out because I think it was in June or July. And then the water was freezing because it was all snow melt. So you'd either fry outside or you would be really cold in the water. And then every night we would get off the river and camp and do all these little side hikes. And it's pretty amazing to be at the bottom of the canyon, floating down the Colorado, and think about how long it took for the water to create this channel that dug hundreds of feet down in the earth. I mean, it's a groove that was created over, I don't know how many years. And it had its pattern, how it flowed. And the river changes over time. Every river changes over time, but it changes along the edges very gradually, right? It starts fairly straight and then it starts to twist and turn, and it twists and turns, and it can take centuries for it to really have its character. You really get that sense when you're riding at the bottom of it for a week. Now, I was thinking about that the other day, because when I think about the non-financial retirement plan, and the theme of this one is how to create your new rhythm in life. And that made me think of record players and records have grooves, and grooves made me somehow think of the Grand Canyon. Don't ask me why. That's just how my mind works. But I guess my point is, like the Grand Canyon, professionally, your life has created a pretty well-defined groove that you've followed for decades. Your commute, your travel schedule, your work, where you live, and sure, maybe you've switched jobs, and we all have life events that may disrupt that groove and cause us to create new ones. But the overall theme, up until this point in life, as an adult, has been work. And we've talked about the areas that impacts where you live, your social network, your identity, your affirmation cycle. That's a pretty deep groove that you've created. And if you think of retirement, you stop that flow immediately. It's like the Hoover Dam. All of a sudden it stops. And the danger could be, like the Hoover Dam, you create just a lake, a stagnant lake that doesn't flow any other direction. In my mind, I think that's the danger and the challenge is what you need to do is once it stops, because you've dammed off the professional you, is you need to create a new channel so the water, your life spirit, can flow again. Oh, now I'm getting very touchy-feely or whatever. But I just think that way visually. You have to create this new groove that is very different from the old one. And that's not a bad thing. And so we're going to talk a little bit about that today. And the other thing I want to talk about, because we had this meetup a couple of weeks ago, which I thought was amazing. We had about 600 people live on, hanging out for an hour. And those are very exciting, by the way. I was reading the chat because we get a text file of all the chat going on. People really want to help each other. They're really trying to figure this out, and they're looking for wisdom. And one of the things in the meetup we had was, what is this concept of rocking retirement? I mean, I talk about it a lot. What the heck is that anyway? And we came up with a working definition that we presented in the meetup. So I'm going to share it with you. This is what this show is all about. And this is what the club is all about. This is what we're all working towards. Rocking retirement, it's the state where your resources are aligned with your imagined best life, where your decisions about money and life are intertwined. You really can't separate them. That's what rocking retirement is. And I get people talking about how we talk about the softer side of things of retirement more than most. In my mind, I guess we do, but I think they're all intertwined. The money and what you want out of life all really come together. They're not separate. And we can get as technical as anybody, but I think what ends up happening in retirement planning is just it's all technical and no life. And they're really the same thing. They all go together. Now, after that meetup where we were talking about that, one of the coaches shared in our after action report, he says, Roger, I sort of get it. I always thought of rocking retirement as like a noun, but really it's a verb. It's an action. It's a way of being. And I think that's actually true. And I appreciated him pointing that out. Now let's talk about this journey that created this channel of your life, right? That's, we know it's work, it's family, it's promotion, it's accumulation. Those are the things that created your journey, your channel. So when you're preparing for retirement, what is the beginnings of that channel, that new branch of the river that's going to go a completely different direction? Step one is the pre-planning, right? Where you're focusing on, okay, how do I change my life and make this transition to retirement, to this new direction? So that's the planning stage. So that's step one of this journey. A lot of times that's very money focused, and rightly so, because the money is critical. It's your resources you have to create the flow of your new life. And so it becomes very money focused and focused on those questions of, when can I take this new direction? What will that new direction's lifestyle look like? What can I afford? And will I be okay over the life of retirement until I pass? Will I be okay financially? So this is the pre-planning stage to create this framework of what it will look like, what's possible, and will I be okay? And that's critical. Once you figure that out, and then you get to the point of retirement, the next stage of the journey is that honeymoon, right? That celebration that we did it. And that's where usually at the beginning, you're very active. You're doing all those things that you've put on hold. You're golfing a lot. You're creating furniture. Everything is new and exciting. And then the third stage, once we get past the honeymoon, is really an inflection point. This is where we ask the question, is this it? Is it just golfing all day? Is it just making furniture? Not that it's a negative necessarily. We just ask the question, is this what life will be forever? Once we get through all the newness and fun? And this is an inflection point, because for some people, they never overtly ask the question and they just get stuck and they atrophy. They stop growing intellectually, emotionally, relationally, physically, and they really is just it. They're on the park bench for the rest of their life, entertaining themselves and looking for distractions. We've seen people like this. If we can get past this inflection point in a positive way, we can get to a new routine, a new rhythm, a new channel in our river that is growing and flowing until we pass. This is the Renaissance, where our relationships are thriving and ever renewing, where we're growing, but in a way that we want to grow. It's not about growing professionally. It could be growing as a husband or a wife or a grandfather or a father or a mother. It could be growing in all sorts of ways. And this is where the state of rocking retirement can really happen, when we're not just stuck in distraction and entertainment for the rest of our life. We're actually in a renaissance where we're exploring life with all of this time freedom, and it's ours to create whatever it is we want to create. And it doesn't have to be about changing the world. That's exciting. And that is essentially the journey that creates this new groove in your life. And the whole point of this month-long series is to help you see that this is an inflection point, this change to retirement, and help you acknowledge all of these areas that will be changing in your life, so you can just do some self-evaluation. So you can proactively know that this stuff is happening rather than just feel the anxiousness of it, but not really identify where it's coming from. So what does this mean about putting this whole non-financial plan together? Where I think a couple things. One is it's not a linear plan like the financial plan. That's a very strict process that you should follow. That's the process that we teach and do. This is more of a menu item where we keep iterating on the different areas of our life so we can just try to improve a little bit and be aware of it and take incremental action on it. And for some of us, we need to really deal with this because it's a big deal. For others, you're just going to fall into a natural new rhythm or a natural new groove, and you don't. But what I want to suggest to you is that when we get to this honeymoon stage of retirement, don't feel like you have to figure this all out. This is a very long-term project, and it doesn't have to be something you need to stress about. Just rest. Assess this new path your stream is on, and then just start walking that direction intentionally, because rocking retirement is a verb. With that, I want to bring on our head retirement coach in the Rock Retirement Club, Kevin Lyles, BW, affectionately, and talk about designing your life energy intentionally. So as part of this series wrap up on creating a new rhythm of life, I thought we'd bring on our head retirement coach in the Rock Retirement Club, Kevin Lyles, aka BW, and talk about designing your life energy. Now, Kevin, I got to say up front, when I hear that title, Designing Your Life Energy, it makes me think of new wave-ish, right? Designing Your Life Energy with Kevin Lyles.
Can I get you to do my intros?
Yeah. So is it new wavy what you're talking about here? What are we talking about?
It's really not, Roger. It is a way to just do some intentional planning around how you want your retirement to go. And when we talk about life arenas, we talk about 6 different life arenas, and you can divide up your life into these 6. So let me go over those briefly, and then we'll talk about how we use it. There's the career life arena, and that's all that you do that's job related. And you might say, well, you're retired now, so does that go away? It really doesn't. It doesn't have to be a job where you get paid a salary. It can be anything. It's whatever the primary mission of your life is. Maybe it's volunteer work. It could be a political campaign. It can just be whatever it is that's the primary thing that gets you out of bed and up and going every morning. So
do you have to have something?
You really do. And we'll get to it when we talk a little bit more about leisure, which is one of the other 6 life arenas. If you don't have something like that, then you no longer will even enjoy your leisure, because leisure, the primary consideration for something being leisure, it's a diversion from something. If leisure takes over, then you really don't have a something anymore.
I guess it's like sweet and sour. You can't have just sweet. That's not sustainable. You can't have happiness without sadness. It's that type of thing, right?
Exactly. You know, we talk so much in retirement coaching about purpose and mission and meaning and how to get those. Well, that's sort of what this becomes in retirement is, what is your career in retirement? What are you about? What is it you're trying to accomplish? If it's a job, fine. If you're working full or part-time in retirement, if it's a volunteer activity that's really meaningful to you, if you're babysitting the grandkids 3 days a week, then maybe that's it. It can be almost anything, but it's what you do that's your primary mission. So that's the career life arena.
So I imagine that could be, because we've talked about health before and how being healthy could be a job, right? And I saw this example the other day of, I love mountain biking. Right. I'm getting ready to go to Colorado and do some mountain biking while we're out there. And that's the joy. That's the leisure. Right. But I still have to put in the work. Like I have a 45-minute power zone endurance ride I need to do today where that's more work. I'm on my Peloton. I'm sweating. I'm stressing myself. That's the work part of the leisure, so that you have to have both. Sure. And I imagine even if your job is to be an amazing grandparent, right? That sounds all roses, but that also means dealing with the screaming kid and changing diapers or tantrums and everything.
Right. You've actually just gotten us into 2 or 3 of the other life arenas.
I'm sorry.
Just your example.
I'm sorry.
No,
Go
that's
ahead.
fine. And because there aren't any bright lines between these, and you have to sit down, and some activities may fit in several. But when we're talking about career life arena, we're talking about your primary, what you do that's job related or that is mission related, I would say. Then number 2 is family. And this is all your relationships with family members, both close family and not so close family. The third life arena is relationships. And this is all the relationships that you have with other people outside of your family. So it can range from casual acquaintances, the barista you meet at the coffee counter every day, or to your very best friend that you've had for your entire life. So all those relationships, that's a life arena. Then number 4, and you mentioned this one, is the self-life arena. It's everything you do to make your body and mind as fit and healthy as possible. The 5th life arena is spiritual. And this is the sort of total of your relationship with a higher power. And for many people, it's religious in nature, but it doesn't have to be at all. It's spirit life is sort of where you experience awe and wonder and beauty and love and all those kinds of things. So that one is sort of your new agey type thing, but it's very real for all of us. Some people will have a spiritual experience when they climb to a mountaintop and they look at everything outside. I've mentioned before, when I go to the beach, I get a spiritual feeling about that, just sitting at the beach and appreciating it. But it's sort of whatever higher power you believe in, it's your relationship with that higher power and how you interact with it. And then the 6th area, life arena, is leisure. And these are activities outside of your career life arena, which rejuvenate your body and stimulate your mind and just enrich your spirit. So that's leisure activities. And you can see why I said, if you take a leisure activity and you do it as work, that's a lot of people will do that. So for instance, if you decided I'm going to be the greatest senior mountain biker in the world, then that could easily become your career in your career life arena. But guess what? When it goes there, it's no longer leisure. It's no longer a diversion. It's your primary. So you need to have other leisure activities if you decide to do that.
It's like if you want to become a scratch golfer, it's no longer leisure.
Exactly. Good example. It can become your career life arena. And then, boy, you better have some other pursuits.
Because
you're not going to be
in some ways, it steals the joy. Like I think of golf. It's like when I expect myself to be really good, it almost steals the joy from it.
Exactly. I've been a golfer for 40 years and I go through phases. When I have a goal in mind, either lower my handicap or do well in a tournament, and it becomes almost like a career. But then I have other phases when, I don't care. And sort of for me, it's almost seasonal. I'll play in some tournaments early in the season. And then after about August, I'm done with tournaments. I'm just wanting to enjoy my friends. And so it can go back and forth.
Okay. So when we golf here, that's the Kevin I want.
You're going to get my best effort, Roger.
No, I don't want that. I don't want that.
So we've got these 6 life arenas: career, family, relationships, self, spiritual, and leisure. And so the way I use this is I think about a pie chart. I know you love pie charts, Roger, in your financial planning. So what I ask people to do is think about how they are currently spending their life energy. And I say life energy instead of time because it's not a purely time-based. Obviously, it has some aspect of time, but it's really, how often is your mind on this in this life arena? And I want you to think about, divide up 100% among those 6 where you are now. And then I ask retirees to think about their ideal retirement life and how would they want to spend their life energy. So if you're still working, a lot of us have way too big of a number in the career life arena, right? It's 70%, 80% occupies our life energy. And so maybe you want to take that down to 30 in retirement. Well, then you've got 40% you need to reallocate. And so that's the way I think if you think about your life this way, it can help you make sure you're pursuing your own priorities.
And the danger here, and we talked a little bit about the life wheel. It's a repurposed life wheel, which we shared in the series. Yeah. The danger here, I would think, is if we think of this as a job, because this is a lot to think about, just these 6 things. And you've shared many times of this is a menu. You don't have to kill them all. Figure out the one that you feel is deficient and that you care about right now, right? You don't want to overanalyze this and make it a bigger task than it really needs to be.
Yeah, I like to think the analogy I use is you want it to be a compass. You don't want it to be a GPS system. It's not going to take you exactly somewhere like a GPS will, but a compass is going to point you in the right direction. And when you start steering too far off of where your values are and where your priorities are, if you find yourself ignoring your family, you just know relationships with my wife, my children, my extended family aren't where I want them to be. Well, then you use this to steer you back towards your true north.
Wise words from a man who's walked this journey. Thanks so much.
Still walking.
Still walking. Thanks, Kevin.
Thanks.
Now we get to some of your listener questions, which we're going to do exclusively next month as well. If you have a question that you'd like to have answered on the show, you can go to rogerwhitney.com/Ask Roger, and you can submit your question, and we'll do our best to answer it on the show. First question is from Nicole on the Rule of 55. Nicole says, I've been listening to the podcast for the last 6 months and have learned so much, which is awesome, Nicole. Currently 44 years old, looking to retire at age 55, and I recently been researching the Rule of 55. She says she's seen this on the Retirement Manifesto blog, and we've talked about it. Can you explain this in detail? It seems odd that everyone says you can withdraw from your 401k and 403b until 59 and a half, when the Rule of 55 says you can withdraw without penalty after you turn 55. What is the catch is really what Nicole wants to know about this Rule of 55. P.S., she says, send my best regards to rock star Nicole Mills. I miss having her on the show. Well, I think she was on last week, Nicole, and we will have more Nicole on the show for years to come, actually. So there really isn't a catch, Nicole. So the Rule of 55 states that if you retire after you turn 55, that you can take withdrawals from your 401k or 403b from those accounts without a penalty, that 10% penalty. So as long as you have separated service after the age of 55 and the funds are retained in the 401k or 403b, you can actually take withdrawals without the penalty. Because if you recall, normally in an individual retirement account, the number we always hear or the age we always hear is 59 and a half. If you take money out before 59 and a half, there's this 10% penalty. But the Rule of 55 is specific to these retirement plans. So some of the catches that usually trip people up, Nicole, is that if they separate service, say at age 53, and they leave their money in their 401k and then they turn 55 and they want to take money out, they can't do that without a penalty because you actually have to separate service after age 55, even within the year. And so it's not just simply being over 55, you have to separate and be from your company at age 55 or beyond. The second place that people usually get tripped up, Nicole, is that they retire after 55 from the company and they take their 401k or their 403b and then they move it to an IRA. So they qualified for the first part of it. They separated service after age 55, but then they get tripped up because they move it out of these qualified plans to an IRA and then think that they can take the distribution without penalty prior to 59 and a half. And that's not the case. You have to keep it in the qualified plan because once you move it, you lose that privilege. So hopefully that helped clarify. There's no catch as long as you follow the rules. And good luck on your journey. I'm glad you're listening. Now, our next question comes from Gail on something called the aristocrats. Makes me think of the aristocrats. I'm the leader. Gail says, thank you for all the resources in your podcast. You're welcome. We're excited you're here. She's approaching retirement on June 30th, 2021. And she goes, yikes, Gail, yikes. What are you saying, yikes? That's exciting. That's exciting. And she says, my husband and I have been working with a financial planner who has put together a detailed plan for us. The plan introduced us to what is something called the dividend aristocrats. which we've never heard of before. We're educating ourselves on this to see how it fits with our retirement plan. So Gail, what the dividend aristocrats are, this was actually developed by the S&P 500 Index, Standard & Poor's, and it is companies within the S&P 500, and they are companies that have increased their dividend payment for at least the 25 past years. So if you meet those two requirements, you're in the S&P 500, and the company has increased its dividend consistently each year, then for 25 years, then you are, quote unquote, a dividend aristocrat. The logic behind this is that dividends are essentially money that are paid out to shareholders, the owners of the company, that are based off of the profits of the company. So they create cash flow and you receive it as money in your account, or sometimes you can reinvest those. And so companies that honor shareholders generally are considered companies that will pay dividends to their shareholders by taking the free cash flow from the company and giving some to the owners. So it's not just about appreciation. And then the second requirement is essentially trying to find companies that have financial resilience. The logic being that if you've been able to increase your dividend, the amount of money you pay back to shareholders per share every year for 25 years, you must be a good manager of cash flow. Because when you commit to paying a dividend as a company, you don't want to change that commitment very often. If I say I'm going to give you 2 cents for every share that you own, that becomes essentially a liability that you want to keep that up. You don't want to say, I'm going to give you 2 cents this year and I'm going to give you 25 cents next year and nothing the year after that. That's not very consistent. And if you end up doing that, that means you're not really managing your cash flow well, and you don't have a lot of free cash flow because you got to change it all the time based on the whims of the world. But if you're a disciplined company, in theory, you can say, I'm going to pay you 5 cents a share on every share you own in a dividend, and I'm going to continue to do that. I'm not going to change that. In fact, because our company is doing so well and we're such good stewards of the resources of the company, every year I'm going to increase that dividend to pay back to you. And that's essentially what dividend aristocrats do, is that they, over the last 25 years, have consistently increased their dividend over the last 25 years. In theory, buying the dividend aristocrat, you're buying companies that are pretty good stewards of their money and that they have a lot of free cash flow, meaning that they typically earn a lot of money relative to the cost of producing goods. So in examples of companies that are in the dividend aristocrats, as of December 2020, you have 3M, Abbott Laboratories, AT&T, Caterpillar, Chevron, etc. And there's a whole list of them. Now, does this mean that they are superior companies? Not necessarily. Some companies will use a lot of debt still, but that's what the dividend aristocrats are. Now, let's get to your question about integrating this into your retirement plan. I am not opposed to integrating it, Gail, at some level. I'm not a big fan of trying to create an entire portfolio simply to throw off a lot of dividends with the idea that you're going to live off of the dividends. I personally am much more in favor of a structured approach where you are prepaying yourself and that your investment portfolio is actually taking whatever dividends and capital gains and reinvesting back in the portfolio because it has a long enough time frame. And you managing your cash flow on your balance sheet through having a contingency fund, which is an emergency fund, having a income floor, which is monies set aside to pay yourself each year for a number of years, so you don't have to wonder where it's going to come from, and then have the rest of the money invested in very diversified portfolios, which could include dividend aristocrats. But if it did, 9 times out of 10, at least for me, we're going to be reinvesting those monies, not trying to take them as income to live off of. Depending on your financial situation, if you are way overfunded for retirement and the numbers are substantial, then simply taking this income could be more appropriate because you have a large enough asset base to be able to generate income. So I'm not necessarily opposed to that, but that's not most people. In general, I do like companies that pay consistent dividends, even in the diversified portfolio, because dividends historically have been a significant part of returns. And by owning companies that pay dividends, you're essentially buying companies that generally have good cash flow. So I'm not opposed to it, but I think from a retirement plan strategy, my worry is It shouldn't be about the portfolio construction to pay you dividends, because I don't think that's a great way of doing it nowadays. But I do think it could be a part of your long-term investment time horizon. So hopefully that helps you, Gail. Now, our last comment of the day comes from Anne on retirement wisdom. Anne says, love your podcast. I've been a regular listener for a couple of years now. Awesome. And she really enjoyed the podcast where we had recent featuring retirees that offered pieces of wisdom because they've already created their new groove in retirement. She says, my husband and I are in our early 60s and will be retiring soon next year. Awesome. So it's helpful to hear what they wish they would have known before they retired. And I hope this becomes a regular feature. Well, Anne, I think that's a great idea. And it will, I don't know if it'll be a feature, but we'll definitely highlight it from time to time. That's definitely one thing that is one of the biggest benefits of the club for sure. So if you have retirement wisdom, you're already retired, you're willing to share it. Maybe it's something financial, maybe it's the non-financial topic, and maybe it's something, hey, I wish I would have known that. Or I'm really glad that I did this. I would love for you to share it with me. You can go to rogerwhitney.com/ask Roger. You actually don't have to ask a question. You can just share your wisdom or a comment. And then Anne will try to sprinkle those in from time to time because I agree, it's definitely helpful to see people that are ahead of us on the journey. With all of that, let's go set a SMART sprint.
On your marks, get set.
And we're off. Just a little baby step we can take in 7 days to, well, rock retirement, rock life. So in the next 7 days, here we are at the end of May, I challenge you to pick one area of your non-financial life. If you're pre-planning for retirement, it could be your friends. It could be your boundaries with work. It could be your hobbies. It could be your social network. Just pick one and figure out a little baby step you can take in the next 7 days to start and improve that. So I'll give you an example for myself. I always have said that I don't have a lot of local friends. I got amazing friends, I feel, but none of them live near me just because it's the nature of my life. And so this last Saturday, I went and hung out for a couple hours with about 8 or 9 members of the Rock Retirement Club that live here locally. And we just went to a Mexican restaurant and just had lunch. It was amazing to have people that are in a similar phase of life, have a similar spirit. I believe everybody else had, just an amazing time. And we've agreed to try to do that more often. So I feel like I have the seeds of creating some more local friendships where I can go out and do stuff with. So there's an example of one. Now, what are you going to do? Hey, I just want to tell you, don't get freaked out about all this non-financial stuff. Don't get freaked out about the financial stuff. You can do this. Now, you may not be able to accomplish everything that you want to achieve, but if you have a process and you follow it diligently to create a strategy to get a feasible plan, and you keep iterating on that, you can create a great life, even if you feel like, man, I've screwed some things up. We all have. I have, for sure. Look forward to talking to you next week. Hey, it's time for that all-important disclaimer. We so appreciate you listening to the show and love your questions and love the teaching that we're able to provide here. And actually, it helps us too. But remember, you're not our clients.
Would not love it if you took advice from us on the show.
We would not love it if you took advice from us on the show. Realize it's helpful in education. Talk to your legal advisor, your tax advisor, or your financial advisor before you make any decisions.
We appreciate you joining us today for this episode of Retirement Answer Man. Be sure to visit rogerwhitney.com/answers to access the Retirement Answer Library with over 30 checklists to help you make the most of the only life you have. Remember, you have more power than you realize to create an amazing life starting today with Retirement Answer Man. The opinions voiced in this material are for general information only and are not intended to provide specific advice or recommendations for any individual. All performance referenced is historical and no guarantee of future results. All indices are unmanaged and may not be invested into directly. Have a wonderful day.